What sort of advice would you give to anyone out there who feels very disconnected from God?
If you haven't been to church, just go. Go in sweatpants and a t-shirt and walk in that building knowing and having the confidence that everyone in there is just as messy and broken as you. They just don't want to show it. I was traveling for work. I was stuck in a town, so I had to get a hotel. I didn't want to drive 5 hours home in the dark. Stayed in the hotel and fell into sin that night. I was alone. I felt like I was scared. I was freaked out. Or something was off. Like I just felt unsettled. But I woke up that morning. The still small voice said, "That's what it's like to be disconnected from me. And your sin does that." I was like, when we not only come as a community together and say, "Hey, I'm messy and I'm broken," not only can we get in the mud with people and get messy, sit with them in a well, but we can show people that we are all experiencing the mess and that none of us are perfect. And when we showcase that to people and share that, we can.
My guest is Keoni Momohara, and he's the host of the Broken Collective podcast. He's an amazing young man with a huge heart for God, and I can't wait for you to hear this conversation. Keoni, welcome to the Patrick Ishimwe Show.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yeah. What do you usually do on your Saturdays?
Most of the time I just kind of hang out with family. When the weather's nice, I go fishing. I go boating, kind of hang out by the river, just get out in the world and get away from the city. But the weather's just now starting to get nice and rivers are just now starting to flow. So can't go quite yet, but soon I will be not at home on Saturdays.
Dude, I can tell you're already a good Christian because you already possess one of the most important qualities that a Christian needs, which is patience. And I imagine being someone who loves to fish, you're probably a very patient person. You can sit there for a long time until you catch something.
The Lord has definitely developed my patience in that. Sometimes I just get so upset. I'm like, I'm not even fishing. I'm just casting. I'm not catching anything. Let it be a catch day, Lord. But he hasn't shown up like he did for Peter yet in the lake. But that's yet to be seen.
I love that. Oh, man. So can you begin by talking us through your faith journey? What were some of the key moments that you can look back right now, thinking back to your earlier days in your walk with Christ that sort of defined your faith?
My parents grew up in the church. My dad had a radical experience with the Lord and literally switched his life around. So he was in the church all the time. My mom was, she grew up her parents were from South Dakota and, it's very religious there, the bonnets and the headpieces. So she was in church as well. And I was always in church. I remember when I was about 8 years old, we had this thing, it's kind of like Awanas, where it's just a kids group. And I kind of understood the concept of Jesus. I'd heard about the man all my life. People would be praying for me and I'd be like, I don't know who you're praying to, but thank you. I'm like 3. But when I was about 8, I was at the little kids group and they said, if you want to accept Jesus into your heart, we'll walk you through it. And I did that. And I remember a still small voice, even at 8. And it was like, 1, yes, I'm so excited. Thank you. Yeah. And for 2, things will be different now. And I remember looking at my little friends in like 8th grade and being like, things are different. This is going to be great. This is cool. And that was kind of the first experience with the Lord. And then I had another pivotal moment when I was probably 13, 14. We had changed churches and my parents had been kind of always threatening a divorce in that time. Yeah. And I always thought that it was just them not wanting to work harder on it or do better at it. I was like young, had no knowledge or experience in that. So
fair.
When I they said we were switching churches, I was like, you're going to give up on this too? Wow. So I was hesitant to go, and I was pretty bad. I was nasty.
How old were you at this
But
time?
we finally, like 12,
Oh
13.
wow. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But we finally went to that new church, and I reluctantly walked in, sat in the row, and pouted. I was like, I don't want to be here. This is stupid. This isn't my old church.
Yeah.
But I saw the tech booth, because our church it had a tiny hole at the wall with like a big old audio mixer, but that was it.
Yeah. Yeah.
They used PowerPoint for their stuff. So I saw the tech booth, and I saw all the shiny, flashy lights, and I was like, that's interesting, but I still don't want to be here. So went to that first service, sat down, and just pouted the whole time. And then towards the end, I wouldn't say a word, but I felt like the pastor was speaking right at me. I don't remember what it was, but I was like, okay, well, I haven't felt this before. That's different. I wonder if this is like actually what a church is supposed to look like. So then,
Was this church a lot bigger than your previous church?
Yeah. So the main, at that time, there was the main campus, which was like the big campus. And then we had this littler campus, which was like a satellite campus. So it was just a video. But it was a big church compared to what I just left, which was like 30 people, elderly.
Everything is about perspective. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I remember coming back from that first service and kind of being interested about the tech part. So I was like, I like technology, and maybe I can serve, maybe I can help. So I went to the tech director, kind of got into the tech sphere. And I didn't know it at the time, but that tech director and the people around me were starting to disciple me and kind of pour into me, which I'd never experienced before.
Yes, sir.
So that was refreshing. And then I remember one day, because I used to volunteer all the time. I was like, I'm 14, 15. I have nothing better to do. I might as well. I like it. So one day I had a break from volunteering, and I went and sat in the service, and we sat in a different spot and get through the whole service. And they get to the call of, if you've accepted Jesus into your heart, they do the, with everyone's head bowed and eyes closed, raise your hand. Well, I was a rebellious little kid, and I was like, I'm always following the rules, and there's nothing saying that I can't just peek. So I had my head bowed, and I just opened my eyes. But before I could get up to see who was raising their hands, I saw a white figure walk down the aisle. And I was like, oh, I probably wasn't supposed to be looking at this time. I'm going to go close my eyes now. That's kind of, what the heck? And then hands started raising.
Wow.
And I couldn't see the hands because I'd kind of freaked out by that moment. But you could hear the hands go up and the amount of claps from the stage. Usually it's kind of like, yes, I see you. And this was like, whoa, whoa. So that was kind of one moment where I was like, okay, this dude is not just like what I hear in these stories. Something came over this place. Something was here and really impacted people.
Yeah.
So that was a pivotal moment. And then, let's see, 15 or 16-ish, because I'd been working in tech so long, I knew how to do everything. Mm-hmm. And the tech director pulled me in, and he's like, guess what? And I was like, what? We're getting a new soundboard? He's like, no, I'm leaving. It's like, okay. Yeah, he's like, here's your new job. You're a tech director now. I was like, what? So I went through that. This is kind of where the church hurt started to take place. My faith wasn't super strong in that period. I mean, it was more solidified than when I was younger because I'd seen something and I was like, whoa. But became the tech director of this church at like 16.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was weird. And then for about 6 months I did that and got to meet some really cool people. And then one day they just said, hey, you're not needed here anymore in this capacity, and we need you to train your replacement. And I was
What?
like, okay, I'm assuming like I'll still be paid in that time. He's like, no, you need to do it as a volunteer. I was like, okay, I'll just take myself off of the volunteer list then.
Yeah.
You guys can handle it. So that was kind of the start of things. Kind of drifted away at that point. Wasn't too solid in the faith. Went to work at
Yeah.
Best Buy.
Did they ever tell you what happened there? Like, did they ever like say what their reasoning was? Like, did they have someone more experienced? Like, what was it exactly? It seems like a very strange decision to make. And I do recognize that, as someone who was born and raised in the church, is that the church has been guilty of like taking people and using their gifts and taking until they don't need them anymore and just sort of disposing of them. And you see that in the, on the production teams, but you also see it on the worship teams. You take someone who's a good singer, use them, like use their gift, and he helps grow your church. And then when you no longer need them, you just kind of dispose of them like they're not a human being. And it's so messed up, but I've seen it.
Yeah, there was another experience with that. There was a youth pastor, great youth pastor, truly had a heart for kids.
Yeah.
And he was like, I met him and I was like, I didn't think this is what youth pastors were like. It was different. But the church didn't allow him to wrestle with things. They didn't really support him. He was kind of secluded in this little church out here. And it's like, oh, you join this random whole team meeting once a week, but we don't really check on you. Right. And then he kind of was, he went through some things and couldn't wrestle with a group of people. So he left. But they didn't give me much of an explanation. Yeah. And to be transparent, I can't blame them fully because I was 16 and I was running a tech department, and I think they were kind of looking for something more full-time, more stable. Like, I want you here all the time. It didn't necessarily need to be that, but there wasn't a true explanation. Just like, hey, we don't need you now. Train your replacement. Right. So I kind of distanced myself from then. Went to Best Buy, and then I was kind of working there for a while. And again, faith wasn't too intact. It was kind of just like, I know of Jesus. I don't really know him though. But then it was kind of funny because in that time when I was the tech director at like 16, I got a random thought that was like, what if you're just the tech director of the whole church? And I was like, that'd be cool, but like, that's freaky. I'm used to one person. Yeah. So long story short, worked at Best Buy, got tired of it, called that same church again because that location I'd worked at had shut down. Yeah. And I was just like, hey, I don't like this Best Buy thing. I'm not meant to sit here and make routers look pretty on a shelf. Do you have work? Like, no, not right now. I was like, okay, well, keep my number and call me if you do. And I got a call. They said, yep, we have an opening. The tech director at the main location is leaving. Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
So we're training the assistant to be the tech director, and then we'll just have you as the assistant. I was like, perfect, great. So I called Best Buy. I was supposed to show up at work on a Saturday. I called them and I said, hey, I'm not coming in today and I'm not coming back. Right. So quit Best Buy and went to start working for the church. Again, faith wasn't very solid at this point. It was there, but it wasn't there.
I get
worked
that.
Through,
worked
through that. But the timing and purpose and his plan and all of this is just miraculous. I was in my senior year of high school. So I worked at Best Buy like sophomore, junior year. Worked at the church this summer of junior year and senior year. And randomly on a Wednesday afternoon, I got a call and it said, hey, your boss, the tech director of the church, has just been fired. Could congratulations, you're the tech director of the main campus.
Did it feel like a repeat of that previous episode where the other person above you left and they kind of expected? So were you like a little traumatized by what could possibly happen? Like the possibility of the same thing that happened to you before happening again?
No, it was different this time because I was a senior in high school. I only had like, I think this was almost into the summertime. So I only had like 3 months of school left.
Yeah.
And then at that point I wasn't going to go to college. So I was like, okay, I have a little bit of school left. I work here in the summers. I've worked here all this time anyway. Maybe this will just become my full-time job.
Fair.
Did that. Then the same thing happened.
Wow.
Hey, we're hiring your replacement. We need you to train them. This time you'll be paid, but we need you to train them. And then to add to that, the person that had taken the job that I had in that smaller campus, because it closed, moved up to the main campus.
Whoa.
So I was met with a new guy that I'd never met before. I was supposed to act kind and friendly to him and show characteristics of Jesus when he had just taken my job.
Yeah.
And I had to now try to integrate with the person that did the same thing to me prior. And there was about a 3-month span where I was kind of training the new guy. He was mostly just asking basic questions, getting to know the layout of things.
Yeah.
I still had to fix the messy issues. And then one day the worship pastor, not even the tech director, not even my boss at this point, called me into his office. And I love this dude. He set me up and helped me so much.
Yeah.
And he had the decency to sit me down and talk to me about it. He said, we're not going to keep you on. And it's just because of money. They didn't. And I knew that was a little bit of an off thing because the church made a lot of money and they had a lot of people on staff. So I knew that it was just kind of a way to be like, we're done. Yeah. But he said, I know this sucks, but our sister church is also looking for a tech director because theirs is going to leave again. I was like, well, I mean, I just got out of high school. I was kind of expecting this to be a full-time job and I don't have anything else. So yeah, send me over there.
Yeah.
I was grateful for it at the time. They hired me on, gave me a little bit more money. Same kind of principle where I was supposed to take over the tech department and this guy was going to leave. This time my faith it was still the same. It hadn't grown. I'd seen things and I kind of felt things but it didn't impact my life a lot. Anyway, went through that, got to another point where they pulled me into the room and said, this time the worship pastor said, I don't feel you're gifted anymore. You can either sign a behavioral contract saying you'll change your attitude and your behavior, or you can submit your resignation.
Whoa.
Yeah. I was like, huh?
Was it a big surprise for you?
Yeah, but it needed to happen that way. I was kind of, the expectations weren't set on either side, really. I didn't know what I was supposed to do. I knew that I programmed the lights and got the lyrics ready and did all that for the weekend. But other than that, I didn't have anything to do. And I was like, well, if I'm going to be a tech director, I think I should start taking over what you're doing. This other guy was doing. Yeah. But there was no like communication in that. It was just like, okay, I'm going to a meeting. Bye. I'm like, cool. I guess I'll sit here and twiddle my thumbs.
I'm so
but
sorry. But
then
man.
it's thank you. I've had to work through it and I'm getting over that and through that. But I think the biggest turning point, one of the two, was this meeting with this worship pastor when he said, I don't feel you're gifted anymore. First thought that came to my mind was, you didn't give me these gifts in the first place, so you can't take them away, for one.
Yeah.
But then I heard a still small voice that said, you can leave now. And it was the biggest sigh of relief in my life.
Yeah.
I was released from the season and I was like, nope, I don't even want to sign the contract. I'll have my resignation to you tonight. We're done. But that was him coming back into my life saying, hey, I'm here and I'm giving you permission to leave. You didn't realize you were stuck in this. You needed to learn from it, but now you can go. It was almost like I have better for you. Like this is done. So I went through that season.
Wow.
And my faith got a little bit stronger then. It was also lacking because now I was unemployed.
Yeah. What made you not want to go to college?
Funny thing is, when they had they set aside time for us to go apply to colleges. They'd be like, you can take one period and go apply to your colleges so you can, have time to do that in school. And so I did, because I was like, I don't really think I'm going, because I've always kind of been a creative. I wasn't like interested in going to business school or, being a doctor or being an attorney.
So like that. Okay.
Yeah, I was like, I'll go fill out an application just to get out of class. Sure. Whatever happens, happens. And I didn't have to spend, 2 hours in math and history.
Looking back at those days, was being a tech director or being on a production team at a church what you aspired to do for the rest of your life, or were there other ambitions out there?
Heck no.
Tell us a little more about that.
When I was growing up, I wanted to be a police officer.
Oh, wow.
I loved cops. I was just infatuated, and I wanted to, I would run around. My mom had this old, I think it was a Beretta.
Okay.
And it reminded me of a cop car. So I had a little cop radio in it, and I would act like I was a cop. And then growing up, I was kind of like, I don't know if I want to be put in the line of hate and all that. So, but then oddly enough, when I was in high school, I got my EMT license.
Wow.
Because it was like, I love the lights, I love the sirens, I love the rush, and I get to help people. I'm just like a cop, but I don't have a gun pointed at me 24/7.
You don't get shot at, yeah.
Exactly. So I was aspiring to be an EMT, got my license. I did that part-time while I was a tech director. It was an adrenaline dump. It was exhilarating. But I was kind of like, I don't think this is the rest of my life either. And then my EMT teacher was like, maybe you should just go get your paramedic degree. And I was like, well, if I'm going to go to college, because it was a 2-year degree, you had to spend money. And I was like, if I'm going to go to college, I'm going to go all out. I'm going to be an emergency room physician.
Yeah.
So I had the medical field kind of in my purview. That was kind of the goal. That was the aim. Yeah. And tech was just paying the bills.
Yeah. Did you know anyone in your family or friends or parents or friends who worked in the medical field?
No. My grandma, I guess my grandma was a nurse way back in the day. She did it for like 2 years.
Okay.
But nobody in my family is in medical fields. Nobody that I was connected to was in the medical field. But that's good. It drew me in. Long story short, no, I didn't have any plans to be a tech director. I was planning to be a photographer too at some point, full time. Yeah. Didn't really know what I wanted. I knew that tech was not my full-time job. Okay. And then going through the church, going and have my EMT license, I came to a point where I was kind of overwhelmed with the whole responding to people's lives being on the line. So I let that go. I still have my license, but I quit working on an ambulance and worked at a hospital. It was like a kind of like a standalone ICU when you were you weren't in that bad of condition to be in a hospital, but you weren't able to go home. They'd send you to this place that I worked at. And that was crazy. I was training on my first day, got dumped into the ICU on my second day. I was like, my training officer said, we're in the ICU today. I was like, cool. I'll just follow you around and like help you do stuff. She's like, no, I'm not even trained in the ICU.
Oh.
And now we both have 6 patients. You take one side, I take the other.
Whoa.
Yeah. So after that, I found a lapse in scheduling and I put my 2 weeks in. But the biggest thing in that shift was my cousin, because at that hospital, you only worked 3 days a week. So I was working 3 days a week. And my cousin was like, I need help with like estimating and invoices. I was like, that's easy. It's QuickBooks. It's like, you know what you charge, you put the number in, you're done. So then that started, and he could pay me a better salary full time. So I quit the hospital and then did that. And again, I didn't think I'd ever be in that either. And then that blossomed into me getting to start my own business.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I was like, okay, this is the rest of my life. Entrepreneurship, being a business owner, that's what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah. I could honestly tell by just hearing about you describe all these different experiences that you've had, all these different jobs. I was like, this dude is like a purebred like entrepreneur. Like, and you can see it like from back when you were like 12 years old. Obviously, when you're that young, you don't realize it, but I feel like it's always been in you to be an entrepreneur. And it just took you a little bit of time to figure it out. But you figure it out really early. Like, there's a lot of people who don't make it until they're like 40s before they realize that they're actually an entrepreneur and they can't just work a regular 9-to-5 job.
Yeah. It was, there's been a lot of, like I said, his timing and purpose and everything is crazy.
Yeah.
Because I had to, when I became a business owner, I was like, oh, this is cool. I knew nothing. I was like 19, started a business.
Yeah. What was the business?
It was I was still working for my cousin, but he didn't want to have to pay payroll tax on my time and for me. So I started my own business under it was like an estimation and administration service for contractors.
Okay.
That branched out into being a business consultant, like setting up processes and systems for people.
Oh, awesome.
It didn't last long because now that I look back, I wasn't prepared. I knew I could do it because I'd started this business, and you get that mindset of like, okay, well, no one else is going to figure it out, so I have to. So I knew that I could do it, but I didn't have the knowledge, the skills, the maturity to execute in a proper way.
Yeah.
So I kind of pulled that back and just did office work for my cousin, which in turn led to doing insurance work.
Yeah.
Because you have to read insurance estimates. And then in that, I found out that I love to tell people why I'm right. And I love to argue. So talking with adjusters and getting things paid was amazing. And then I had an experience where the Lord kind of solidified that I was in the right place. There was an elderly couple, their roof was torn apart, and we needed to do this thing to the roof to make it work.
Exactly.
But that thing cost like $10,000, and the insurance was not responding. They weren't getting back to me. So these people, they're like in their 70s or 80s, Social Security. I said, hey, we need to do this to get the roof done, and we're going to wait a little bit. But they're like, if I need to empty my savings out and my Social Security and move money around, I'll make sure it happens. And I was like, no, you won't. That's ridiculous. You pay for this insurance, and I'm not going to let you do that. You're living off of this. Yeah. That claim I forgot about it. And then one day I get a call from them, and they say, you were an angel. I don't know what you did, but I just got a check for $10,000.
Wow.
Thank you. And that was what kind of solidified that I was in the right place. So I just kind of kept doing that. And then my cousin told me, we kind of both knew it was coming, but unexpectedly he said, I can't pay you net. I can't pay you anymore.
Yeah. Like his business wasn't doing well enough for him to have employees. Like the numbers weren't adding up, or what is it?
Yeah, in Montana, when in construction, it's very cyclical. So
Mm,
you have to like amp it up and get crap done in the spring and summer because no one's doing anything in the winter.
yeah.
But you still have bills to pay in the winter.
Yep.
And at that time, he didn't have enough momentum in the spring and summer to keep that much of a padding for the winter.
Yeah.
And I knew it. We both felt it coming. But he's like, I can't pay you anymore. And I was like, okay, well, God, you've gotten me this far. Again, knew of the guy, never knew him. You've gotten me this far, and I think you'll take me elsewhere. Like, you're not going to abandon me. But it was also a struggle because at that point I had to start finding money and bills needed to get paid. And it was kind of like, why am I going through this, God? Like, why can't you just help me out? Why can't you just make sure that I'm taken care of? But looking back, provision is promised, and I'm always taken care of. I always had the bread for that day. But in that time, I was like, I need the bread for like 6 months because like I don't know where my next check's coming from.
I relate to you in so many ways, like, but most importantly in the sense that you had all these things that you were passionate about. From a very young age, I knew I didn't want to be a doctor or a lawyer or work a regular 9 to 5. Like I just knew that wasn't my calling, that wasn't my purpose. I had so many interests, and for the longest time, I was mad at myself. I was mad at God. I was mad at everybody because I was like, I wish I was like one of my friends. I wish like I wanted to like go to school and work so hard and just be a doctor. Or I wish I had this one skill that was so visible to the outside world that they could look at me every single day and be like, oh, that's the thing that you were put on this earth to do. And for the longest time in my life, I just never had that thing. And I always had so many friends and family members around me who were so gifted at so many different things. And I always felt like an outcast. I always felt like I didn't belong because it was so hard for me to just pinpoint one thing that I was the best at in my circle that everybody could look at me and be like, oh, that's what he's here for. And it took me some time to realize that that's totally okay. Like you don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to have that one thing that everybody can look at and be like, whoa, he's amazing, he's going places or whatever. Like we're all built differently, and that's totally fine.
Being in business, that's really changed my perspective. Someone said once, you'll drive by more opportunity in a day that you could do anything with in a lifetime. And I was like, you can look at literally anything. You can look at the hat you're wearing. There's a whole industry behind that. The microphone we're speaking into. There's a whole industry behind that. There's people that sell medical devices to doctors. There's people that, the world is endless and full of possibilities and opportunities. And I still kind of struggle with I don't have it figured out. But being in business, you look at every other entrepreneur and they're like, figure it out. Like, figure it out. I don't know what that is. That doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And then you look at your family and you're like, nobody ever has anything figured out.
Nobody.
They're just going through a season, and that season could be what they need. Maybe it isn't. But everyone's just going through their own journey, and they're doing what they know is best at that time. So the pressure to figure it all out more applies in my business, because I feel that I think as entrepreneurs, you're like, I'm leading a team of people and I'm delivering a service and a product, and people look at me like the expert or the person to go to in this field, but I don't know everything. So that's kind of the struggle now, is like, I know that I'm capable. I know that I'm good at what I do because I'm getting paid for it. But there's always a nudge to be like, are you really doing this, or are you just flying by the seat of your pants?
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about your podcast, The Broken Collective. Tell us a little more about it. What's the show about, and what sort of conversations are you having on the podcast?
Yeah, so this kind of ties into another pivotal moment of faith in my life.
Yeah.
Like I said, growing up, all the way up until about 6 to 8 months ago, I just knew of Jesus. And I'd be reminded of like the things that he's done for me, or I have actually a running list on my phone that I think might be turned into a book, but it's a list of just like little things throughout life that God has showed me.
Yeah.
But I had a pivotal moment because of all the church hurt and being in your own business. It can be kind of like I'm the only one, and then you add our culture to it. I'm the only one here. No one's coming to save me. Figure it out. I drew away from the Lord and was like, well, like I guess I'm the one that has to save myself. So I was really distant, and I was on TikTok. It was the randomest thing. And at that time, anything about Jesus on TikTok, I'd scroll past. I didn't want anything to do with it. I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to interact with it.
Yeah.
And that was just, the enemy not wanting me to come to the breakthrough I did. But a worship song came on, and I don't know what it was, but I couldn't scroll. And I wept. I broke down and wept. Couldn't stand up, like had to hold on to a refrigerator to go throw my messy napkins in the garbage. But the first word after right when I broke down was grace. And it just kept repeating in my head. Grace, 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 grace. And I was remembered of every thing that I've done and every worst moment in my life. And it was like he said, I was there. I saw it, and I still love you.
Wow.
My grace is sufficient for even that. And I didn't know what the heck happened. I just had to sit and weep for like an hour.
Wow.
So then I was like, okay, I'm not like gung-ho Christian. I don't really want the Lord, but like you just did this to me. So maybe I'll start getting into something more Christian. So I watched the Tim Ross Upset the World, the Basement podcast.
I love Tim Ross. He's great.
Yes, he's amazing. And I started watching his podcasts, and it was authentic. It didn't feel forced at all. It was people that I'd known about and seen in the world, and I was interested in it. And my biggest struggle at that time, and it has been most of my life, is reading the Bible. It was like, what are you saying? What does this mean? It's just words on a page. But Tim Ross was like, people always ask me, how do you start reading the Bible? And he said, you're overcomplicating it. It's a book. Read it from start to finish. I was like, duh, hello. That's kind of the answer.
I think of that.
Exactly. It's the simplest thing you could do. So I was like, interesting. So then I started reading the Word a little more. And back in church, they had a message on reading the Bible. And through this journey that I've had through my life, the Lord kind of showed me that his word is almost encoded. So when this book is sitting on a table and it's open, someone who does not believe in him could read it. Sure. But they're not going to get the depth, and they're not going to get certain things from it. It's going to just be a book. And he does that one for protection. So his word is not, and again, this is just my perspective. This is what I felt I was going through. But he said it kind of was like, it's a protection so that people can't use my word against me in a negative way because they don't understand it. But two, I want you to ask for my help. So then I was like, oh, well, if I don't know how to read it, give me the eyes to see what you need me to see. Give me the ears to hear you speak, and open my heart so I can grasp and understand the depth of your word. And so I started at Genesis, and I did that prayer. I do that every day before I read the Bible, and I tell you the amount of depth that came out of Genesis 1 verse 1 was crazy. I felt like I had to write it down or record it. So I did a little voice note of Genesis. I think it was the whole chapter of Genesis. And that voice note was like 45 minutes because the depth just kept opening. And I was like, okay, clearly there's something else to this word. It's not just a book. You're connecting. One of them was like, the stars are to be a sign and signals of times or seasons. And I was like, whoa, you used a star to point people to your son. And you talked about it before he was even mentioned. Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the depth. That's where it started. And then I watched more podcasts, and it's kind of, I loved the authenticity of it. And I was like, I want to start a podcast. That'd be pretty cool. And as soon as that came out of my mouth or entered my mind, the Lord said, nope. And I was like, why? Like, I could do it. He's like, yeah, you could. But right now it'd be for your glory, not for mine. So no. I was like, you're right. You're right. I don't like it that you're right, but you're right. And then I remembered while I was working at the church, I thought I had my faith figured out. And I was like, I think I'm called to be a minister. I think I'm called to be a pastor. And I think I'm called to start a church or a brand or something. So I made this logo and this name. I was like, okay, God, I did it. Like it's here. Something's here. What do I do with it? Nothing. Silence. So then I forgot about it. And that was, of course, 2 years ago.
What sort of advice would you give to anyone out there who feels very disconnected from God?
I was traveling for work. I was stuck in a town, and like I didn't expect to be there. So I had to get a hotel. I didn't want to drive 5 hours home in the dark. I have a bad habit of hitting deer. Yeah. So I was like, I'm not going to risk it. I'm going to stay in this hotel. Stayed in the hotel and fell into sin that night. I was alone, and of course, loneliness does things. So, but I felt like I was scared. I was freaked out. And hotel rooms, you don't know who's been in there doing what. So, there's a lot that could be going on. But I got this feeling of like something was in the room or something was off. Like I just felt unsettled. And recently, when I've prayed, I said, okay, I command any unclean, anything here that is not of Jesus Christ needs to leave in Jesus' name. It is not welcome here. It has no place. And usually pretty instantly, it's gone. And then I ask the Holy Spirit to flood the room, and it happens. So I was like, okay, well, I've ran into this before. I'll just do it again. So I did. Nothing happened. I still felt scared. And this time, before I had prayed and done that, it was just kind of a lingering anxiety, I'll call it. It wasn't like potent. It wasn't terrifying. I was just off. Well, after that prayer, it just got worse. It got heavier. And I just laid in bed and I just said, Jesus, 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 help. I just begged. I repeatedly, it was like, help, please help. And it didn't go away. I kind of just fell asleep, kind of, counted sheep and fell asleep. But I woke up that morning and he said, the still small voice said, that's what it's like to be disconnected from me. And your sin does that. I was like, yeah, you're right. And I don't want that to ever happen again. So we're not going to play that game anymore. We're done. But I told my cousin about it. And she said, maybe he just wanted you to cry out and ask. So I'd say, if you're not hearing anything, it doesn't mean he's not there, because he is. The teacher is always silent during the test. But for 2, don't stop asking. With prayer and supplication, bring it to the Lord. And you may not get an answer audibly. You may not get an answer right that moment. It may be 2 years down the road, like it was for this. But if you just keep asking, he hasn't forsaken you. He has not left you. It's not like this one prayer request pissed him off and he's done. That's not how he works. We expect God to show up in the way that we want him to show up.
Yeah.
We are not him. He has a plan for everything. And maybe you're just asking for the wrong thing at that time. Maybe it needs to shift. But I would just say, keep asking. Something will happen. Either he'll give it to you in the end, or you'll find out that that wasn't what you needed.
That's really good. So can you talk to us a little bit about the mission or the heart behind the podcast, what you're hoping to achieve through these conversations?
In that season of I want to start a podcast. And then he brought this design up and this thing that I'd done 2 years ago. And he said, okay, now your heart's changed. Because in this whole time I was reading scripture and I prayed a dangerous prayer. Take a scalpel to my heart and cut it into 1,000,000 pieces. Whatever you need to do to make you the center of it, do it.
Where did you learn to pray like that?
Yeah, I don't have it figured out, if I'm honest. He's a relational God. The veil is broke. The veil is torn. We don't need to go to a priest and confess to talk. We don't need to go sit in the tabernacle and sit on the mercy seat to hear from him. So I just started having authentic conversation. That's kind of the point of the podcast too, is like coming to him as I am, as I know how to speak in the condition I'm in. Some nights when I pray, it's like, I don't have much for you, but you know my heart and you see it. So please hear and heal my heart. That's all I have the confidence to say. I just but when it came to the heart stuff, it just felt right. Like the whole analogy of reaping and sowing and plowing, I was like, well, my heart is a garden and it's full of rocks. It's full of hard dirt. Nothing can be planted in that. So take a plow to it, loosen it up, turn the dirt over. Because I want to reap a harvest that is one that you've intended. But in prayer, I just say, be authentic, be honest. You don't have to figure the words out. We're not in, this isn't King James. You don't have to say thee, thou, thou. Just give him your heart authentically. That's all he wants. He just wants your heart. And sometimes, for instance, in, I think it was Genesis, when Jacob is wrestling with a man, we can all kind of assume that it's Jesus. He's like, let me go. Let me go. No, I won't let you go. And eventually he just says, bless me and let me go. Sometimes he just wants to hear you say it.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to bless you. I just needed you to hear it. I just needed you to say it. So be authentic and honest with him.
That's so good. It actually makes me think about a moment that I once experienced during a worship service. You know how sometimes when worship leaders are leading a song, it gets to a point where the music is playing, but they're not singing anything. Yeah. And he was talking about how sometimes God can hear the melody of your heart. And that's bigger than any words you can ever put together in a sentence can ever be.
Another small shift in my mind that I got used to is if I feel something, I'm tempted with something, or I'm feeling different, go to the word. And it's a small shift, but you'd be even just pulling out your Bible app.
Good. Yeah.
The shift will amaze you. Peace will fall upon you. The heart of the show is authenticity. Going through church hurt and being in churches, you're expected to be holier than thou and have all of it put together. Like, I know what I'm doing in life. I know where I'm going. Yeah. And leaving the church, working in the church, coming back to faith, the whole premise is come as you are, not come as we are in the church. And that's the whole point. It's raw, authentic, unfiltered conversation that shows our brokenness and our messiness. And that's the whole point of the show. If we can let people know that we're messy and we're broken, because we all are. In a podcast or two ago, I said, if you haven't been to church, just go. Go in sweatpants and a t-shirt and walk in that building knowing and having the confidence that everyone in there is just as messy and broken as you. They just don't want to show it. So that's the heart of the podcast, is when we not only come as a community together and say, hey, I'm messy and I'm broken. Not only can we get in the mud with people and get messy, sit with them in a well, but we can show people that we are all experiencing the mess and that none of us are perfect. And when we showcase that to people and share that, we can overcome with the word of our testimony. Scripture says the enemy was overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony.
Yeah.
And I think more people need to hear the messy, broken parts of not only Christianity, but people in general.
Yeah. What would you say is something that God has been teaching you a lot lately that you think our listeners would love to, hear about?
My friend's girlfriend was in a car accident. In the ICU, had her leg amputated. Jeez. And it wasn't good. And I had a prayer. I prayed for her, of course, and I said, Jesus, you've done amazing miracles and you've healed people so that they would believe. And I pray that this person in her healing would have such a radical change and such a radical healing that the only thing people could ever think was Jesus, was you. And I prayed that, and I was kind of like, okay, I know it's your will. If it's your will that she's not healed fully and completely in 2 days, that's fine.
Yeah.
It's your will. But I was on Facebook last week, and she herself posted. She gave a recap of what happened and her story. And a week earlier, she was in the ICU with a tube in her throat.
Wow.
And that hit me. That it was a miraculous change.
Yeah.
And then I started listening to the worship song "Too Good to Not Believe," and I got to the part where it says, "I've seen cancer disappear and I've seen metal plates dissolve. Don't you tell me he can't do it."
Yeah.
And at that moment, I sobbed. I'm learning now that it was his heart. But as I was going through this emotional response, I got a kind of a picture in my head of all these people standing and pointing at this golden building. This, it was beautiful. You wanted to look at it. But then in the back, at the very back of the crowd, Jesus stood. And it was like he brought me into that moment and said, you see all these people looking that way? I'm right behind them. I'm literally right behind them. And I so desperately want to make cancer disappear. I want to heal miraculously. I want to perform amazing, glorious miracles. But nobody will turn around and even look at me. All I want is my children. I just want my children. And I think the biggest thing that he's telling me through this whole thing is to stop and turn around. He just wants you.
Yeah.
And if you would just, even if it's a glimpse of I don't know you, Jesus, I don't know who you are or what you do, but show up. He'll be like, all right, bet, watch. People just aren't asking the question. So
yeah.
I just encourage people to, even if you don't believe, even if you are a believer, just ask. Turn around and look at him. Acknowledge him in some way. And he will do great things in your life.
As someone who's been in a lonely place before, what sort of advice would you give someone who's dealing with a very difficult and lonely situation right now?
One, I think perspective has a lot to do with it. So does your environment. But the biggest thing would just be, and this has been heavy on my heart lately, is discipleship and community. I know that's a very biblical take on things. But
Yeah.
in Genesis, it says that it is not good for man to be alone.
To be alone. Yeah.
Preston Morris said, men will die alone. Men will die alone, in death, but you will die if you do this thing called life alone.
Yeah.
And being in a season, I literally worked from home for 2 years, and that was lonely.
Yeah.
I didn't have to leave the house. I didn't feel connected. And I would say being in that age range, even age, don't let that dictate what community looks like. Because you may go and hang out with a group of younger kids or a group of younger people, and you may be giving them wisdom and advice that you didn't know they needed.
Yeah.
Same thing goes with the older generation. You may go to an old folks home, and maybe you just help them do arts and crafts, but that could give them a sense of hope.
Yeah.
And then being in community, I think whether you're joining a church would be a great place to start, because there's people of all walks of life there that you can really get connected with. But don't let your age or your circumstance dictate who and how people enter your life.
That's so good.
You can, it sounds corny, but there's Facebook groups. There's Meetup. There's Meetup.
I've
Facebook
used that
groups.
Meetup app a lot too. Yeah.
Yeah. And
when I first moved to Washington, D.C. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I think even just going for a walk, you'd be surprised at how much routine and venturing outside of your home can help you.
Yeah.
Let's say you go for a walk. There's a coffee shop 10 minutes from your house. Go for a walk. Look people in the eye and just smile at them. Just being around people, you'll either get to know the barista who's making your coffee, or somebody will say, hey, I see you here every morning reading your Bible or reading this book. What book are you on?
Yeah.
There's connection. So I think the enemy can really put a damper on our mind saying, you're alone. You have no one.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? Go dive into this sin. Really, we can just step outside, because there's a world full of people and a world full of amazing hearts that really want to show love and care for you. But I agree, making friends is hard, but don't go into it with the attitude of making a friend. Go into it with, I am not going to be lonely. I am not going to be isolated. I am at least going to be in community. You don't have to interact with anybody. Just go sit at a coffee shop. But getting out and being around people, something will happen. Even join a networking group. We've got something called 1 Million Cups. I think they're pretty much everywhere. It's free. There's free coffee. It's business owners and entrepreneurs, but there's no sign up. Just go sit with them. Get to know their business. Maybe they can connect you with someone else. Sharing is caring, and caring is connecting. So do that in your own life. Connect people to people all over the place. Make a little mini network. And you'll see how vast and how open people really are to communication and relationship.
Keoni, thank you so much for being on the Patrick Ishimwe Show. God bless you.
God bless you. Thank you.